So how can we grow our potatoes organically without using any chemicals and try and avoid the disease potato blight? Now, potato blight is really common. You're going to get it in July and August if you live in the UK or Ireland and you have damp, that sort of damp late summer weather. And you can see it here on the leaves on my crop where it's an airborne disease. It's going to affect the leaves first, and then if we just left it, it's going to travel down to the tubers below the ground, which obviously we don't want. So how do we deal with it? Well, my first piece of advice is just grow early or new potatoes, and that's because they are harvested in late June or early July and there's no blight around then, so we avoid it completely. Second option then is you can choose your blight resistant varieties. Now, Sarpomira is probably the most popular, but there are others, and what that is going to do is delay the onset of blight. It doesn't avoid it completely, but it just means that you're going to get more growth, so larger potatoes, before blight hits. Now, when it does hit, what we can do is we can remove those leaves and discard them away from the crop, and that's going to slow down the spread. But once it's got to this stage, we really need to remove all the foliage because, as we said, that blight is going to travel down to the tubers below. And what we want to do is cut it off, like I'm doing with the secateurs. We don't want to pull it up because we don't want to disturb the potatoes below the ground, because obviously we don't want those blight spores to land on the potatoes. Now, if you have any that have broken the surface of the ground, then you want to harvest those straight away, and we'll use those. And then we want to leave the rest of them we don't want to leave the rest of them under the ground. And the point there is that with all this messing, when we've been cutting our foliage and rummaging around, we've inadvertently spread more of those blight spores onto the surface, and we don't want to infect the potatoes. But blight can only live on live plant material. So we leave the potatoes under the ground for maybe another 2 weeks or so before we harvest, and that way those spores will have died before we lift the potatoes. And that brings me to my last point. I'm often asked, can you add this blighted foliage to your compost heap? And it's the same point. Because blight can't live on dead plant material, and once this goes in the compost heap, it will be dead, then it is perfectly safe to do so, provided you haven't pulled up the foliage, because if you get any small potatoes with that, then that could potentially spread the disease. So that's it. I hope this has been helpful. Do like and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.